What's up, guys? NASA scientists speak out. There's someone else on the moon. This is an article I found off Ancient Code. I will give the link in the description below. Check it out, and we'll cover a little bit of this article and kind of tie in a little bit of John Brandenburg's research as well with the new Mars synthesis and our life and death on Mars, the new Mars synthesis, but also this Ancient Code article does cover some of John Brandenburg's quotes as well. And let's go and get into it. It seems that it isn't a question anymore whether or not there are mysterious alien structures on the moon. In the last couple of years, numerous scientists with verifiable backgrounds have come forward speaking about a sinister truth behind Earth's moon. And the quote by the sixth man to walk on the moon, Dr. Edgar Mitchell: read the books, read the lore, start to understand what has really been going on, because there is no doubt that we are being visited. The universe that we live in is much more wondrous, exciting, complex, and far-reaching than we were ever able to know up until this point in time. Mankind has long wondered if we're alone in the universe, but only in our period do we really have evidence. No, we're not alone. And in 1979, Maurice Chatland, I believe I'm saying that right, former chief of NASA's communication systems, confirmed that Armstrong had indeed reported seeing two UFOs on the rim of a crater. The encounter was common knowledge in NASA, he revealed, but nobody has talked about it until now. And this is Neil Armstrong's cryptic speech.
We have with us a group of students among America's best. To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
And then later it says, by John Brandenburg, it was the Clementine mission, a photo reconnaissance mission, basically to check out if someone was building bases on the moon that we didn't know about. Were they expanding them? And then also, of all the pictures I've seen from the moon that show possible structures, the most impressive is a picture of miles wide rectilinear structure. This looks unmistakably artificial, and it shouldn't be there. As somebody in the space defense community, I look on any such structure on the moon with great concern because it isn't ours. There's no way we could have built such a thing. It means someone else is up there. And then also, Dr. Brandenburg made extremely interesting statements about Mars when he said, there is enough evidence to prove that at least 2 major nuclear blasts went off at the surface of the red planet in the distant past. And also, they go on to say about Brandenburg, the theory proposed by Dr. Brandenburg is based on the traces of uranium and thorium that have been registered on the surface of the Mars. This Martian civilization was wiped out by another hostile alien race from elsewhere in the universe. Dr. Brandenburg warns that our civilization could face the same fate. Officially, NASA and scientists around the globe have spoken out about aliens and how they expect we will discover signs of extraterrestrial life in the next 20 years or so. However, many people believe these statements are mere preparation for a disclosure movement that is going to change everything we believed about mankind, our origin, and life in the universe. This article is off of Ancient Code. I'll give this, just check it out. We'll give it in the description below. And then I'm going to just check out this about 10-minute audio piece that I've taken from an interview I did with Dr. John Brandenburg, talking about the life and death on Mars, the new Mars synthesis. And this was about 5 or 6 years ago. I did this interview with him off of Cryptic Knowledge Radio. But just let me know what you think, comments below. And here is the interview, a few pieces that I did with John Brandenburg.
And so let me put it this way. I was very interested in Mars, and it was a very strange set of events, but suddenly I found myself looking at a program on the face on Mars.
Yeah.
And the face looked so human, and I also I wanted to write science fiction. And one of the plot things I was going to have was that people, what we call human, is actually found all over the stars, that we aren't just limited to Earth. And I thought that would be a really interesting, science fiction kind of thing, that the human race hadn't really evolved here completely, or if it had, it had actually evolved separately on other places, kind of in complete reversal of the, evolution, the way evolution thought. And so then suddenly I found myself staring at the face on Mars. So I worked with Vince DiPietro and eventually Dick Hoagland. And you must admit, we made that face on, I have to hand it to Dick Hoagland. He made that face as more recognized than George Washington on the dollar bill.
Yeah.
And at that time also I discovered I was working in Washington, D.C., and I discovered there was a UFO cover-up. In fact, I discovered that Mars had become part of the UFO cover-up. That the government did not want the face on Mars investigated. But let me put it this way. I also looked at the face on Mars and the pyramid, and we found two more faces on the far side of the planet. We'll talk about that some other time. But I realized, Mars looks like a planet that used to be like Earth. In fact, God forbid, if the Earth ever lost all its life and atmosphere, it would turn into a planet that looked like Mars. It would turn bright red because of the oxygen remaining in our soil. If you look at pictures of Earth from space, the places that are desert are bright red, just like Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere oxidizing the iron, so it turns it into a kind of rust-like substance called ferric oxide. And when lava comes out of a volcano, it's black. You look at the lava fields in Hawaii; they're all black rock. It's basalt. That's iron that hasn't been exposed to oxygen. It's called ferrous oxide, and then it gets exposed to oxygen in the air and turns bright red, from black to red, and becomes hematite, or what's called, it's taken from hemoglobin, like blood rock. And so Mars looks like a planet that used to have a lot of oxygen in its atmosphere. And so what had happened is, and it looks like it used to have water channels and even an ocean in the north. So Mars looks like a planet that used to be like Earth, supporting a lot of life. And I realized the face on Mars is the chief clue as to what Mars' past climate was like. It was like the Earth, assuming that somebody who lived on Mars was the ones who built the face. So what happened was then I went to a conference and presented a paper just on the Mars ocean. And believe it or not, everybody really liked it. And they don't ever give me any credit, but it's in the records that I was the first person to do this. And so the Mars ocean became official, an officially good idea after that. And I've been basically giving Mars papers ever since. And I would find one interesting issue on Mars, like how old was the surface of Mars.
Yeah.
And one thing you got to realize, Mike, the Mars science in general is very conservative, and it doesn't believe it or not, people think that science is about advancing continually in new ideas. Actually, science hates new ideas and resists them. You have to really, and the more important the new idea is, the harder they'll fight against it. These old graybeards and stuff like that. So what happened is that they accepted the ocean on Mars, and then we found out that the surface of Mars, everybody thought was like 3 billion years old.
Mm-hmm.
No, as it turns out, it's less. The average age of most of Mars, at least in the north, is less than 1 billion years old. And we know that now because we have Mars meteorites. And I was the first person to point out that because these meteorites they can tell the crystallization age when the lava of the Mars meteorites crystallized by, radioisotopes.
Yeah.
They figured out that all the Mars meteorites are about 1 billion years old or less. And that means the north part of Mars, which is the young part of Mars, is about that age. And that's much, much younger than anybody thought. And what that means is the old ocean on Mars is less than 1 billion years old. Mars had an ocean on its surface for most of Mars' geologic history, because the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And they found one Mars rock that's 4.5 billion years old. That's the same age as the Moon, by the way, and also meteorites. That's when the solar system formed. So Mars had an Earth-like climate probably for about 4 billion years, almost as long as the Earth. And that means there was life apparently flourished on Mars from very early. So Mars was like Earth for most of its history. That means anything like intelligent life could have evolved on Mars. So hence, there's a UFO cover-up.
Okay.
If the U.S. government knows that there are intelligent, living advanced civilizations out there in the stars, and some of them have visited us here, and that means the government kind of has an allergy. Because it's covering up that big secret, it has kind of an allergy about signs of intelligent life, especially that looks like us. They basically have made a decision that just not is that no government agency is going to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And we also found out that the enormous nuclear explosion that occurred on Mars. We found out that the U.S. government is not going to acknowledge that happened. Mars apparently had a very tragic. Mars is a place of great tragedy, apparently. Mars had a life with oceans and an oxygen atmosphere, and probably developed intelligent life that carved the faces. But Mars is next to the asteroid belt. So the first thing that apparently happened was Mars got hit with a big asteroid about the size that wiped out the dinosaurs on Earth. And that basically collapsed its climate. And then after that, now that happened, we estimate, about 500 million years ago. Then after that, about 200 million years ago, there was suddenly an enormous nuclear explosion on Mars. And that's very hard to figure out why that happened, or, in fact, I proposed a natural nuclear reactor. In Africa, there were natural nuclear reactors that ran for, they were about 1 billion years ago, and they ran there were very rich uranium deposits, and the water got in there and formed a natural nuclear reactor. But so I proposed that had happened on Mars, and that was a natural-sounding hypothesis, and it got my paper into the conference, which is what I wanted. And I actually even believed it for a while, but I don't really believe it anymore because that would have left an enormous crater. This explosion was so powerful. It was 1 million hydrogen bombs worth. And it devastated the entire planet. It raises a number of questions about who is the human race and where did we really come from? Are we really from this planet, or are we at least partially from some other place? because those people who carved that face on Mars, they sure did look like us, apparently. And so I would only be speculating. I suspect what we're going to find out is that there are a lot of people out there in the cosmos who look and act just like us. And that's going to be a big surprise. And by the way, life on Mars has basically been confirmed. Now, you're going to be hearing more about that in the next couple of weeks. And part of it is that the people down at Houston who work on that Mars rock, ALH 8401.
Yep.
They basically have now found that you can't explain what they found in this rock except with life. And they've basically proven that. It's basically little magnetic crystals that are formed by bacteria.
Yeah.
And they found the magnetic crystals, which are made of iron, even in rock that doesn't have any iron in it. It's like the little bacteria crawled up into cracks into pure limestone and died there. So life on Mars is basically been proven. This is life on Earth. And what it shows, by the way, Mike, and I'm going to get back to the human race here very quickly, but life on Mars apparently began almost immediately as soon as the surface cooled enough to have liquid water. And because the Mars rock they found is very old, it's 4.5 billion years old, and the life signs look like they're in rock that is only about 4.3 million years old. So it's very, very ancient life, very primitive. What happened now also is on Earth they found some very old rocks in Canada, and they're from almost 4.2 billion years old, and they show signs of life. And that means life on Mars and Earth started almost as soon as you had an ocean on both. As soon as you had liquid water, the planets formed, they were red hot, and then they cooled off, and then finally rains fell and formed an ocean on both of them. You had liquid water, and apparently as soon as you had liquid water on both planets, you had life. And this means that this whole idea of the life on Earth starting from primordial soup, and spontaneously organizing itself into cells and stuff, bacteria, that's basically been disproven. What people are going to realize is life on both Mars and Earth was seeded from space. This is called Panspermia. In other words, life on Mars and Earth started so early, there's no way it could have actually spontaneously been generated here or on Mars. It had to come from outer space. And that means we live in a completely living cosmos.